Hello, everybody. Good morning, afternoon, good day from wherever you are calling us from. Welcome to our webinar today on the U.S. Department of Energy Loan Programs Office Overview. We will be discussing investment opportunities in clean energy. My name is Simbiat Yusuf. I am the Member Relations Manager at Fourth. And your moderator today will be Kelly Stevens, our Senior Manager of Strategic Communications and Partnerships. And as always, we have a few updates and announcements before I pass it along and we start the webinar. Attendees, we ask that you please be sure to submit all your questions through the attendee chat. We will be taking questions as the presentation is going on, so please feel free to ask them whenever it pops up. And we will also be sending you out the slide decks and the presentation recording after our webinar this morning. So stay tuned for that. And as always, in case you forgot about Fourth, in the past 2 weeks, we had our last webinar. Who is Fourth? We are a nonprofit trade association advocating for the acceleration of smart transportation through our work in four main focus areas, which are industry development, policy advocacy, consumer engagement, and demonstration projects. If you want to learn more about Fourth and how we aim to do all of the work in an equitable way, you can find more information about our upcoming events, our projects, our papers at our website, fourthmobility.org. And we can't do our work without the support of our members. We want you to support our membership program by becoming a member today. Our work is not possible without the support of members. These webinars won't be possible without the support of our members. To learn more about how you can save on your first year of membership, yes, I said it, save on your first year of membership as a new member, please feel free to reach out to me. My email is on the screen showing up now, and I can get you all of the information on how to save, how to show your support, how to join industry innovators and leaders in the work to advocate for smart transportation. And we want to take this opportunity also to thank our sponsors that continuously sponsor our webinars as well. And we want you to join our team. We're still accepting applications for the communications manager position and the part-time policy manager. If you've heard about Fourth, you like the work we do, and you want to join this energetic, engaging team, we will send a link to the job postings in the recap email. So join the Fourth team, the best team. And have you registered for the E-Mobility Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Conference starting November 17th? If you haven't registered, you do not want to miss this conference. You will join panelists discussing strategies and best practices and facilitation of conversations for engaging diverse communities that are often hit first and worst by air pollution. So we will also send the link to register on here. Registration is on a sliding scale, and we hope you can join the conversation. And again, we hope you've saved the date, marked your calendars, set your reminders for the Roadmap Conference that will be coming back in person June 29th through the 30th of 2022 in fabulous Portland, Oregon. By the first week in October, just a week away, we will be announcing the call for proposals. So get those ideas, get those research papers, everything ready. Call for papers will be announced the first week of October. And we have a fabulous panel for you all today. Our moderator today is Kelly Stevens, who is the Senior Manager of Strategic Communications and Partnerships at Fourth. Her work engages and expands Fourth network of diverse stakeholders and supporters through strategic partnership, communications, and events. Wayne Killen is the senior advisor of the U.S. Department of Energy's Loan Programs Office. He provides outreach and business development for auto manufacturers and the transportation sector in general, as well as their supply chains and the charging infrastructure market. Wayne will be accepting questions throughout his presentation, so please make sure you ask them as they come. And we will also have a portion of time after his presentation for Q&A. So keep those questions coming. He is here to answer all of your questions. And we will also finalize the panel with a quick presentation from Ford's Senior Business Development Manager, Steve Gutmann. We have a quick poll for you all before we start the panel. And our poll today is, which innovative technology area are you interested in financing for? If you can share your answers, what ideas or what key areas are you interested in financing for? We have a lot of about 83% saying EV infrastructure deployment. Second is energy efficiency, maritime aviation electrification. Wow, that is good. Okay, so we have some people going for vehicle manufacturing. This is amazing. So okay, so we will stop the poll with about 81% EV infrastructure deployment, 14% energy efficiency. So thank you all for participating in that poll. And we hope with Wayne's presentation, you have more ideas and a pathway forward. So with that, I will turn it over to Wayne. Wayne?
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon. You can see me, hear me?
Yes, yes, we
I'll
can
take
see
that
you.
as a yes. Okay, hello everyone. It's very nice to be with you today, and thanks Symbiont and the fourth colleagues for having me here today. I got some really exciting information to share. So at a high level, we're going to cover where the loan programs office is today, where we've come from, more importantly, where we're going, and to convey the key point that we are definitely open for business with loans for clean technology, transportation, and things in that vicinity. Interesting poll that we just saw. Obviously, I support very much the EV infrastructure growth and investment in that. There's a lot of priorities there, but also it's interesting at this early stage that we need to be mindful of other sectors that are emerging. So heavy duty truck, maritime, off-road, and aviation are key sectors that I think we want to apply lessons learned from light duty passenger car infrastructure into those new sectors. And that is definitely, those are areas that the Loan Programs Office can help too. And I'm going to talk about that. So, but first, before I jump in, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Wayne Killen again. I've been with the Loan Programs Office just short of 4 months now. I come from, 35 plus years in the automotive sector, specifically vehicle product planning, product launch. I've spent 10 years at Mercedes-Benz, 10 years at Volkswagen Group, the last 4 years at Electrify America doing business development and infrastructure planning for that group. And very much enjoyed it, but I think I was also a little bit of unrest about the larger picture about transportation electrification and frankly, clean energy and bringing these technologies onshore, providing more of a competency and development center in the United States. And that's where the Loan Programs Office comes into play with $40 billion to spend in investments. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And then let's see, I'm going to advance our slides here. And just a quick housekeeping detail. We will have time for Q&A at the end. So if you want to jot down your questions on each slide, I can get through it in 15 or 20 minutes, and then we'll have a robust discussion. So the modern story of Loan Programs Office at Department of Energy really starts with Jigar Shah, who was hired by Jennifer Granholm back in the spring of this year to really revitalize and reposition the agency. And Jigar Shah, you folks probably know, who really pioneered a lot of the aspects of clean technology investment we benefit from today, solar PPAs and so on and so forth. It's great to work for. Jigar has brought on a lot of us to specialize in sectors, if you will. And myself and Chelsea Sexton brought on board to really focus on the transportation sector. So that's primarily four-wheeled cars and trucks, but it's anything that flies, swims, or frankly goes over rails. And I'll talk more about that. And I think where Jigger's point is really accurate and what we should all think about. Way back in 2008 and 2009, when the Loan Programs Office was initially established under the Obama administration, the corollary at that time was solar and wind were still nascent technologies, and they weren't bankable. The traditional banks weren't supporting the growth. They were really at this crux, this chasm of bankability and scaling up for commercial production. And that's where the LPO stepped in with billions of dollars of loans to get solar and wind going. And obviously we know that was a very happy ending years later, where now traditional forms of finance can support those sectors. And what we really want to do now is find those new and emerging technologies that need more care and feeding, that sort of need that same access to capital, that same chance to go beyond a pilot, a prototype to commercial scale, whether it's clean energy or clean transportation. We look at all of those, and that's what I'm going to get into today. So really, that's an important point to take in mind for what frames the mission for the Loan Programs Office. Okay, go to the next slide. And so at our heart, we're a policy-driven bank, okay? And really, we're all about clean American energy infrastructure and clean technologies in general. So I mentioned we have $40 billion in appropriations today to make loans or loan guarantees. We'll talk more about that later. And we're specifically focused on bringing technologies to commercial scale, or scale technologies that are new and emerging, that are beyond the test bench, that need access to capital to really go commercial. So we are debt capital, so essentially a traditional bank, and in many ways, traditional brokers or lenders will not play in this space. It's too risky, it's too emerging, there's not enough backing or proof of offtake, and that's really where we step in. The flexible financing we'll talk about later, but it's not a one-size-fits-all loan. Literally, if the investment is needed up front or over several tranches, if it's an interest-only loan for a while, those are things that we can all tailor to the needs of the lender. And then committed partner really means we want to make the applicant successful, which means from the very early stage through loan closing, it's in our vested interest, obviously, that the loans work out for both parties. And that means we give advice, input, consultation, especially at the early stage, to help the applicant define the project and make sure all of the requirements are met. Okay, we'll move on here. So three broad loan programs that I'm going to tell you about today. The marquee is the Advanced Technology Vehicles Manufacturing Loan, which has close to $18 billion to spend in it right now. And I want to underscore the word manufacturing. So this is all about getting U.S. competency with manufacturing of light-duty passenger cars and trucks, supply chain, and that could go down to batteries, to the minerals for the batteries, as well as EV charging infrastructure. It could also include a hydrogen fuel cell. So on the left, these are really the criteria that you need to keep in mind as an applicant to qualify for an ATVM loan. And remember that this loan was really invented in the late 2000s. So the standards at that time were a little more, let's say at the time they were good. Today, they're kind of a walk in the park. If you think about it, bringing a technology that would improve fuel economy in the passenger car fleet by 25% versus 2005, I would say that's pretty easy. And then for an EV efficient, EV equivalent, that would be 75 plus mile per gallon equivalent. And again, all EVs will beat that today. So that was the criteria then. And again, it is focused on light duty vehicles and trucks. That doesn't mean it's exclusive to that. What it means is there needs to be a critical mass of the offtake of that plant that would support those sectors, but it doesn't mean that the rest of the offtake can support other sectors that are not covered by ATVM today. So the loan at heart will cover things like land acquisition, building a greenfield plant, converting a brownfield plant, tools, equipment, engineering, everything needed, even initial supply chain to get that factory producing, okay? On the right, this is a smattering of things that are included in the supply chain, and you can see it's fairly comprehensive. Really anything at stake that would make a vehicle, whether it's internal combustion, more fuel efficient, or an electric vehicle get more miles per kilowatt hour. These are technologies we want to look at, and I want to underscore that fueling infrastructure is included there. So that means level 2 charging, DC fast charging, any of the related components such as switchgear, power electronics, even circuit boards that make EV chargers work would be eligible. And we're specifically mindful of things like bidirectional charging too. So virtual power plants, distributed energy resources that include charging infrastructure are great projects that we like to stand behind. So that's the Advanced Technology Vehicles Manufacturing Loan. The next one is called Title 17. Now, Title 17 has 3 core loans within it. I will focus on one today, which is called Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. But there are 2 other segments. One is for advanced nuclear, and the other one is advanced fossil, which is really geared more for energy production and distribution. If you want to know more about that, please get a hold of me after today. We're going to focus on Title 17 today because in a lot of ways that covers topics included under ATVM, and then it goes beyond that. But the key to Title 17 is it supports deployment of new or first-to-market technologies, and it could be very wide-ranging. So to give you an example, I have a company now that is looking to convert diesel locomotive trains into electric. That could be an eligible product. In other words, the loan to cover the manufacturing of those components or even the refitting of the train would be eligible for that. Another one could be, well, it's a large category. The key here on the left is the project is more less greenhouse gas intensive than business as usual. So the alternative today. So frankly, switching anything that's fossil fuel powered to electric would generally qualify under Title 17. The key is, in terms of innovation and the scope around that, the project should not have been deployed more than 3 times in 5 years in the United States. So obviously less than that is great. If it's only on the test bench or a prototype, it hasn't been proven really at scale, that might be a little more dicey, but there are other loans and grants, and obviously the equity market can cover that as well. And you see some of the technologies on the right, and I won't go through them now because I have a longer list in a few minutes, but I want to stress the point that Title 17, Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, is a very widely encompassing loan that can cover a lot of different projects. And I should mention that I have several applicants today in marine, aircraft, and rail that are not eligible in ATVM that could be eligible under Title 17. So it's nice to cover the whole transportation sector with the LPO office. So I mentioned there are more expansive priority technologies. These are just a sample of them. So on the left, you see what we're trying to focus on with the ATVM loan today. And I want to stress that it's the entire supply chain, getting that produced in the US, getting US jobs. Critical materials are a big one for us. It could be processing of lithium, could be covered, and obviously building battery packs would be something very much we support, and we have several applicants doing that right now. Title 17, you can see on the right under blue, there's a lot more categories there, and I'm excited about that. I'm actually talking with one applicant now that is looking at taking abandoned coal mines and rock quarries, filling them with water, creating from solar power, creating basically hydropower, clean hydropower to fuel EV charging. So those are wonderful examples of things that we can do with a Title 17 loan, and frankly, repurpose existing assets that were designed for more greenhouse gas intensive activities at one time. So again, this is not a comprehensive list. And if you folks have other ideas of categories we can tackle that should be prioritized, I would love to hear from you. Okay, moving on. So where have we come from? Well, thus far, 30 loans have been made since about 2009, totaling $35 billion in loan value. And that's just the loan piece from us. The project itself might have been double that value. So the actual value is much higher, 37,000 US jobs and 60 million tons of avoided greenhouse gas as a result. And you can see here, it's a wide smattering of different projects. You can see advanced nuclear in the upper left and advanced vehicles manufacturing in the upper right. I should talk more about ATVM loans from the past. You're probably familiar with Nissan and Ford and Fisker way back when, and obviously Tesla was a huge story. Tesla borrowed about $500 million from Loan Programs Office to essentially refit the GM Toyota Fremont plant to build the world's first long-range luxury electric car. And obviously that is a very big success story for the industry in terms of advancing clean transportation. We want to make more of those loans, and we are talking with several startup EV companies and traditional car companies today to not only scale up their EV manufacturing, but the supply chain, including battery components. Okay, so let's talk a little about the process for LPO. So again, I mentioned we are a bank in many respects, so we follow processes that would not be unfamiliar with you in a bank. So pre-application consultations, that is my group. There's about 10 of us that specialize in different sectors. We will work with the applicant to define the project, make sure the requirements are met, and essentially set them up for success. These consultations are free of charge, by the way. Some applicants have 2, so others have 10 before they're ready to submit an application, and that could go over a few weeks to a few months or even a year or more. But it's really important part for setting both sides up for success is those pre-application consultations. And then you should see the timeline up front, up top. That is about 8 months in duration on a typical loan. We can do it faster, 6 or 7 months. Other applications take 9 or 10 months. All depends on the amount of due diligence we have to create and frankly, the responsiveness of the application. Now, step 2 is an important one, the formal application submission. So again, there's already been ideally a lot of pre-application consultation. So in some ways, this is more of a formality. On ATVM, it is one application from soup to nuts, all of the criteria to define the technical eligibility of the project and the financial and business plans of the company and their go-to-market approach. All of that would be studied under ATVM in one application. The Title 17 loan, that is a 2-part process, and it's really designed to make it easy for the applicant. Part 1 is focused on technical and greenhouse gas eligibility, and it's done in 6 weeks or less, and there's no cost to that project. So, that application. So it helps candidates understand that their nascent technology development is actually eligible for a loan with the Loan Programs Office before we go into Part 2, which now resembles what I just described in ATVM. And I was neglecting mentioning the tribal loan program. I should give a quick nod to that. So you recall the Title 17 loan product. We do have a tribal loan program as well with about $3.5 billion in it today. It's very much like Title 17 in terms of renewable energy or energy efficiency projects. The key is that tribal ownership has to occupy at least 51% of the project ownership, and it does not have to be on tribal land. So that is significant. So if that sparks any ideas in the audience. So after the application is submitted, we go into formal due diligence and we draw up a term sheet. That's typically about 6 or 7 months. And what I should say is that in the ATVM loan, after 6 weeks into this process, we will issue the applicant a letter of substantial completion. That's a really important piece of paper because that'll basically tell the applicant from this point forward, you can accrue eligible costs towards closing the loan, that is, even though they're before the loan closing. So that's an important part when you're looking at building a plan and relying on those funds later on. Let's see, the credit approval process is very much standard. The applicant will know before closing the things like the loan to value, project value ratio. We'll have equity expectations. We'll essentially line out milestones after the loan where we will meet monthly or quarterly with the loan applicant to make sure that the project is tracking in terms of, costs and revenues and what have you. So that's really the loan process in a nutshell. It's the core of what we do. But again, what I want to stress today, and at least in the outreach and business development perspective, the work I do, it's really important to get the word out to show people that we're in business and we really want to make these companies successful, either in clean technology or transportation. Okay, loan flexible options. So I want to start on the right side of the slide first, though, because a lot of folks don't understand the size of the loans we make. Our average loan thus far has been $500 million. You can see here, $532 million. The smallest loan, 43 million. And the median loan was 532. The average is 940, even larger. We've gone as high as almost $6 billion back in 2009 with ATVM. But the point I want to make is somewhere in the $100 million north range is where we like to play. And I say that not because 100 million is a floor, but because that is a level of loan that really amortizes the cost of the loan. So the closing cost of loan could approach $1 to $2 million in terms of due diligence, third-party attorney reviews, those kinds of things. Not atypical fees, but as a percentage, they're amortized less over a smaller loan. But again, we can make those smaller loans, but typically we like to go bigger. The loans can be either direct from the Treasury at an interest rate that's very compelling. Last time I checked, the 10-year Treasury was 1.5%. That is what an ATVM loan would carry with it with no markup. So that's financing that's hard to beat. And our typical loan 10 years will go anywhere from 5 to 10 up to 25 years. It's all based on the useful life of the asset or the manufacturing plant. So in addition to a loan, we can make a guarantee, which means if the applicant has a preferred bank with also great rates, we can provide a guarantee, a backstop to that loan to make it more feasible in the market. I mentioned we can go short or long. We have flexible structures in terms of it can be a corporate loan, so the whole company is essentially taking a loan out and can spend the money on different projects, or it can be project specific, which we're going to scrutinize that project itself as well as the parent company, but it's more focused on the project, and usually it's a lower lift. Debt amount determination. So the applicant may want us to cover 50 to 70% of the project cost. We can go as high as 80, by the way. We typically stay in the 50 to 70% range, which means the balance of those funds will either need to come from cash on hand or another source of financing or the equity markets or a SPAC primarily. And then finally, we're excited to make loans. We've got a lot of money. We've got, 35 plus applicants in the hopper right now for ATVM and Title 17. And I think the overall feedback I'm getting is that the loan process is reasonable, the expectations are reasonable, and that we really provide the coaching that will help the applicants be successful. Okay, so how can Fourth help, and frankly, all of you? Well, the key today was getting the word out that we're in business, we want to help, and here's how the loan programs office works. But we'd like to use simply to keep us in mind going forward. Obviously, there's a lot of investment going on in clean energy and transportation today, and especially in terms of coalition building. We like to be in those conversations. I should stress that the loans don't have to go to an individual company. We can also provide loans to joint ventures. And we have several applicants that are reaching across the ecosystem to identify other critical partners. They come together in a joint venture, and we can provide a loan to that entity as well. And then primarily, if you can think of new applicants, if it's not yourselves, folks in the supply chain or that are deploying clean technologies, that's really important for us too. So appreciate any feedback or input you have on any of this, frankly. And I think now I'm ready for questions. Kelly?
Thanks, Wayne. Thanks for that great overview of the loan program office and this opportunity for financing. I see a few questions here in the chat. Feel free to continue to add them, and we'll answer as many as we can. And again, if there are any questions that we don't get to today, we will email those to our presenters and make sure that we follow up with you. So our first question here is, Wayne, can you say again what the interest rates are on these loans? I believe you said 1.5%, and also what the variety of terms can be.
Yeah, so the interest rate is pegged to a U.S. Treasury note. So at the time, and obviously those change daily, but they're typically very low. But I checked this morning, and a 10-year Treasury note was 1.5%. Okay, there's no markup on that interest rate for ATVM. On Title 17, there is a little markup called a credit subsidy fee. and that's based on the assessed risk of the project, the viability of the company, its creditworthiness. So there might be some additional fees paid at closing by the applicant, which might make the interest rate go from, say, 1.5% to maybe 2.5%. But still, it's very compelling financing rate. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question?
The terms, the variety of terms available.
Those can be open-ended. I mean, literally, we're doing 2 to 3 year loans, and we've done as long as, I think, 28 years.
Great. Okay, thank you. We have a question here about the loan program office and the support for startups that are focused on connected vehicle technologies. Wondering if that's part of this portfolio and technologies that you all look at and support.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it can be. I would say if you're talking about Title 17 and again, innovation and greenhouse gas reduction, to the extent that the connected technology provides a fuel savings for that vehicle, then it becomes eligible. And it hasn't been deployed more than 3 times already. So if, for example, let's just bring a ride-hail example. For example, if you had connected technologies that helped the ride-hail driver understand when they should refuel in terms of their capacity that day, the cost of electricity, the openness of the charging networks that day, and let's say that helps improve overall fuel efficiency or miles per kilowatt hour of that EV, that could be then a project that becomes eligible for us.
Great. Okay. So for connected vehicle technology, sounds like as long as it ties back to the energy efficiency, the greenhouse gas reductions, that it could be a
Yeah,
candidate.
I would say more broadly, Kelly, it's either reduces, sequesters, or avoids greenhouse gas. It's those categories in general.
Okay. All right. A question here from Brian about could you provide more information on how governmental entities like state and local governments may qualify?
Yeah, so we are definitely open to that as well, especially in a complementary fashion if they're bringing their own investment along to the table, but that's not required. I would say the only caveat would be we cannot entertain loans to entities that are using other federal agency grants as a means of repayment. But that's generally not some. So, for example, Department of Defense, we're buying the offtake of one of our projects that would not qualify as paying back the loan. We don't want to double dip per se, but certainly state and local governments are eligible, especially if they're bringing together local partners that want to create a joint venture for the loan. There is no exclusion of those entities.
Okay. Great. So a question here about whether the idea needs to be novel or if people can apply for large scale alternate fuel infrastructure deployment nationwide, such as a super fast network.
So it definitely needs to be novel. So, and this is a great example to talk more about. So, for example, if an applicant came to us and said, "Hey, there's still not enough DC fast chargers around the country, even though EVgo and Electrify America have done a lot of work. I want to build a 150 kilowatt DC fast charging network." That loan would not qualify for the simple reason that there's already been deployments of a similar technology. But if that applicant came to us and said, "Hey, I want to take that same 150 kilowatt network and I want to create a virtual power plant out of it, or bring renewables and storage, provide grid services in the future, demand response, and potentially be ready for heavy duty truck charging down the road." Those are now enough innovation checkboxes where that deployment, that project could become eligible.
Okay, next question. Could you discuss potential funding opportunities for auto OEMs, the opportunities that they might take advantage of? And could you provide some clarity on what constitutes a US investment?
Okay, I'll start the second part of the question first. So a U.S. investment simply means for ATVM, you're going to build a U.S. plant and you're going to hire U.S. workers. And there will be some critical mass of supply chain, manufacture, or assembly of that end product in that plant. It doesn't mean 100%. We realize that not everything strategically is available in the United States. You'll have to bring in offshore supplies. That's okay. The only requirement of offshore is that those supplies have to come in under U.S. flagged ships. So that's the Cargo Preference Act of 1954 that the agencies have to follow through. But there's some conditions around that. And the first part of your question, it really, any car company, even putting electric cars aside, if you have a technology, a new powertrain or something like that, that lightweights the vehicle, that brings more than a 25% fuel economy improvement, that could be something we look at. I'm talking with several applicants today that are simply bringing a new type of aluminum or steel to traditional cars, which if you lower the weight by say 10 pounds or something, it might improve, or 10 or 20 pounds, it might improve the fuel economy by 1% or 2%. Those are all directionally the things that we like to see.
So yeah, it sounds like the DOE or LPO is recognizing that with most or many of these technologies, there's the global supply chain or global interactions that are happening international. And it's great to learn about what you mean by US investment. Digging in a bit more into a specific example of that, potentially for OEMs, would software development count? Maybe a battery management system or something like that?
Yes, it would, especially if it were on top of the battery itself or components that make the battery work. So in and of itself, it might be a little bit of a stretch, but again, we're the whole purpose of the outreach group is to listen to these new proposals, and if it doesn't box from a traditional point of view and what we support, we'll certainly go and chase it down. And I should make a point: we have 10,000 Department of Energy engineers at the 17 labs, so we have a great bench to go to inquire about these new technologies and verify and to really understand what would be most helpful in terms of investment.
Great. Okay. Sticking with the U.S. investment a little bit, could you discuss any Buy America compliance requirements with the ATVM or Title 17 loans?
Yes, those are not requirements as of today. That could be in the future, but as of today, it is not required.
All right.
And I should say the whole point of the ATVM loan is to essentially build components in the U.S. so that folks don't have to worry about buying American anymore. And I should say that as a sidebar, there's not enough charging infrastructure components made in the United States today. And that's something I'm really focused on trying to change, because even if you wanted to, you can't in a lot of cases. You have to go offshore to buy charging infrastructure components.
I love that we're moving all around the industry here. We're going to switch to utilities and whether any utilities have taken advantage of these loans given their role in the EV future.
To my knowledge, they haven't, but we've certainly talked to utilities individually. We've talked to EEI, we've talked to EPRI. We are definitely open for business with utilities, especially utilities that might have difficulty getting infrastructure investments done under a rate-based approach and the Public Utility Commission. If they have an investor arm or other source of capital, this is something that we could certainly work with utilities or groups of them.
And Wayne, speaking of groups of utilities and across this opportunity, how does the process differ for coalitions versus one applicant? What does that look like when you have a coalition of different entities?
Well, a coalition I would probably put into the joint venture camp. So a joint venture could be similar or dissimilar entities coming together for a common project. And really, there's no exclusions on who is included in a joint venture. So if that coalition included government and private sector together, that would be okay.
All right. So we're getting a few more detailed questions here. So bear with me as I read through them. So you mentioned the key criteria for advanced technology vehicle manufacturing that was created a decade or so ago. The criteria calls for fully enclosed body that seems to be focused on light duty vehicles. Given the move to reduce vehicle weight, will DOE look to augment or revise the key criteria to include partially enclosed?
Yeah, it's a great question. We are looking at that, or I should say Congress is, because the statute was set up by Congress. And I think there are some additional flexibilities being looked at, obviously, whether it has 3 or 4 wheels, what its intended mission is supposed to be, the safety standards, et cetera. But I think to the extent that fully enclosed body was a key requirement back then. I think there might be some more flexibilities today, such as, you know, if it had, again, I think as long as the safety attributes are there, and and the let's just say the lack of a non-fully enclosed body shell performs some functional or fuel economy advantage that outweighs its drawbacks from the traditional loan definition, then it's something we can look at.
We have time for two more questions, and then we're going to go to some comments from Steve Gutman from Fourth to talk about how Fourth might be able to assist folks with this opportunity. So another specific question here in terms of which portions of a project might be eligible: land acquisition, construction of a storage facility, EV charging infrastructure. Would that whole project be eligible or just portions of it?
A storage facility would not be eligible. As much as I recognize the importance of that today with supply chain, it would not meet the criteria of the loan. But obviously, everything around producing charging infrastructure, short of storing it, would be. So the land acquisition, the building itself, the equipment, the tooling, the initial factory fill, and everything needed to get that plant producing would be eligible, but not storage per se.
Okay. And then one more here about it's about the interest rates. Could you discuss how the interest rates, which I know you touched on earlier, but how do they compare to typical public sector bonds?
Well, they're lower from what I understand. I don't follow the markets a lot, but I've been told they're the lowest you can get. I should caveat they are subject to change, but historically, Treasury notes have been pretty low. And the fact that traditionally a bank obviously is going to mark up their interest rate. There will be a profit margin in there. We don't do that. So there are loan closing costs, but on ATVM, you're getting the Treasury note. The only difference would be if, for example, an applicant has 4 payment tranches, their first tranche might be at the prevailing interest rate at that time, and the fourth tranche might be at a different one. So that has to be considered. But again, overall, the rates have been pretty stable. And I think the whole reason for considering loan programs off this is because these interest rates are hard to beat.
Yeah, 1.5% at this time. That's a pretty incredible interest rate.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to wrap our Q&A and move on to the next portion. Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. We'll have time for more questions in the next part. And I just want to reiterate that this program, this LPO program and financing opportunity is open for not just established businesses and organizations, but also startups and smaller applicants. And from what I've learned from the LPO and from Wayne is they have all sorts of support that they provide to applicants. So they want to talk to you from the beginning and throughout the entire process and really provide support and resources to make this happen. So lean on them, and we'll be sharing our resources on how to connect with Wayne and the LPO and with Fourth if you're interested. And speaking
Thanks,
of
Kelly.
that, yeah, thank you, Wayne. Speaking of Fourth, we're going to move to Steve Gutman, our Senior Business Development Manager, who's going to talk a little bit about how we might be able to help if you're interested in this financing opportunity.
Steve, I
Thanks,
believe you're on.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Wayne. That was a great presentation. So I'm here just to talk for just a few quick minutes about what Fourth is and how we can help our members and others access some of these funds and learn whether your project might be a good fit. Let's see. So first of all, Fourth's mission is pretty simple. We're trying to accelerate the use of electric transportation to move people and goods in more efficient, clean, and equitable ways. We work with a whole range of stakeholders, ranging from OEMs to public sector entities to utilities, even software companies and engineering firms. And we work on innovation and industry development, demonstration projects. We do policy advocacy at all levels, federal, state, local. And we also specialize in public engagement to bring different stakeholders and members of the public together to solve some of the more intractable problems around transportation electrification. We have an industry network team, and as you can see in the slide here, we convene, communicate with, and support a thriving network of industry leaders and stakeholders, again, from all aspects from all sorts of different entities and individuals who are involved in accelerating transportation electrification. We also facilitate knowledge sharing and formation of strong relationships across the sector. Some of the knowledge sharing activities we do is we hold webinars like this one, lots of them all year round. We also have a great annual conference here in Portland called Roadmap that you may have attended, may have heard of. We also aim to expand the network of industry stakeholders through learning, sharing, capacity building, and all sorts of different actions around the sector. And then we work to position ourselves and our partners as drivers of impactful innovations to advance transportation electrification, to attract funding and support for our work. Let's see. With respect to this DOE loans program, if this is something that you're interested in and you'd just like to have a high level sort of get some high level strategic advice, whether, just get another perspective on whether whether our team thinks that your project or your idea is appropriate for the program. You can obviously go directly to Wayne and his team, but we're also here available to to give you our perspective if you think that would be of interest and helpful to your project. We can also connect you with other resources. We think of ourselves as sort of sitting in the middle of the transportation electrification industry in some respects, because we have great contacts, with utilities, with public sector entities, and people who work at all levels of government. We also have great relationship with EV charging companies and with EV manufacturing companies. And so if the project that you're considering could benefit from partnering with folks in the industry, we can certainly help you brainstorm ideas and make introductions if you think that would be helpful. Let's see. We also, one of the reasons that we're offering this is we want to know what's going on out there. We want to keep abreast of what's happening, what's new in the industry, because we are constantly looking for more partners, and we're constantly seeking different grant funding opportunities as well. And when we do that, we don't typically do it alone. We partner with organizations doing innovative, cutting edge stuff. And so if you're doing something that we could partner with you on and pursue grant funding or this sort of loan funding, we're constantly networking and building relationships in the industry so that we can help the industry thrive and grow. Lastly, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't encourage you, if you haven't already, to consider joining forth as a member. Again, we're a nonprofit organization. We're a 501c3 traditional nonprofit, as well as a C6, which is an industry, sort of a trade organization. And members receive our e-newsletter, which has, we feature members in there. We try to keep people up to date on what's going on in the industry. And we also make our members aware of new funding opportunities that have been announced in the past weeks or months. Let's see. This is my contact information. If any of you would like to reach out, please feel free. And if any of you have questions, I'm happy to take a couple of questions now, or to take questions, or just to have you reach out by email as well. Symbiot, I think I'm finished, unless we have any questions directly for me?
Yeah, thank you so much, Steve. If you have any questions for Steve, you can please reach out to him. Here's the contact information for all of our speakers today. We will be sending out the webinar recap after the presentation today, and we will also be sharing the slides from the presentation as well. I am not seeing any questions directly to you, Steve, so I will let you turn off your camera and your webcam and unmute yourself so we can do a quick wrap up of today. And as Kelly mentioned earlier, if we did not get to your question today, there is an opportunity. We will be sending the questions to all of the presenters, and they'll be able to follow up with you after the presentation. Before we wrap up, we do have one more poll question for you all, and this is just a quick one. We want to know how we did and what type of content we should continue bringing you all. So our question today is, did you find this webinar informative? We want to make sure we're getting you content that's highlighting high-level topics in the industry. So we'll give that one more minute for you all to answer. Thank you all for participating. Okay. I will close the poll now. Thank you all for answering. And we do hope to continue bringing you cutting edge news and cutting edge webinars. So if you have any feedback for us, we'll be sending a survey out in the recap email. So let us know what type of topics you would like to receive or how we did. So thank you. As I mentioned, here is our contact information from the speakers. You can reach out to them. We will include them in the webinar recap so you can follow up with them. So with this, I want to say a big appreciation to Kelly Stevens for moderating the panel today. Thank you, Wayne, for presenting, as well as Steve for sharing how Forth can help. We hope the information has been very informative, and we hope you can take some of this and think about some projects and some of the funding opportunities that are available to you. And again, thank you all for taking the time to join us today. In 2 weeks, Tuesday, October 12th at 10 a.m. Pacific time, we will continue our fall webinar series with the charging infrastructure ecosystem, where our panelists will provide updates on the U.S. EV infrastructure plan and strategies, and how we can successfully and equitably scale infrastructure, and also how we can take a close look at policy development from around the globe. We will have Rhett Lawrence, our policy manager, moderating that panel. We will have Mary Brazel from ODOT presenting, and as well as someone from Federal and from our partners at CNEX. We want to use this opportunity to thank the webinar sponsors for the upcoming webinar, Black & Veatch, BMW, and Portland General Electric. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you all for joining us. We hope we get to see you in about 2 weeks for this webinar. A lot more interesting conversations happening. And if you're interested in supporting any of the other webinars we have coming, we still have a lot of content for you, and we'll start developing our series for 2022. Feel free to reach out to me for any sponsorship opportunities available. And again, I wouldn't be doing my job as the member relations manager if I don't plug our membership one more time. Feel free to reach out to myself again if you have any questions about joining Forth as a member. Again, how you can save on your first year of membership. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day. Bye.